Welcome to Northlandia, a place to bring your curiosity because here you'll find curiosities. I'm Wyatt Buckner with the Duluth News Tribune, and I will be your guide as we discover the unique and fascinating stories here in the Northland. Here we celebrate the region's distinctive people, places, and history. In this episode, we look at the Duluth Park that honors a historic street surface. Let's venture forth into Northlandia. To tell us about this historic street, I'm joined again by News Tribune reporter Jimmy Lovrien. Jimmy, welcome to episode 20 of the Northlandia podcast. Yeah, we're 20 episodes in now, so welcome.
Thank you, Wyatt. I'm honored to join you here on our 20th episode.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So talking about how did you find the story and what is it exactly?
Yeah, so Granitoid Memorial Park in Duluth's Chester Park neighborhood. It's a small triangular park surrounded by streets, and it's got a garden, and what it's built in memory of is the first concrete streets laid in Minnesota. And there was a patented process called granitoid. The method was patented in 1907 and then laid in the neighborhood there in 1909 and 1910. And then it was scheduled for repavement by 2000, and a fight over whether or not it would remain or be replaced ensued for the next 4 years. And a part of the resolution was, that this park was kind of built out and included more interpretive signs and information about what granitoid actually is. Before that, it was just a couple of plaques on a, concrete monument pedestal kind of thing that explained that, this was the first concrete street in Minnesota. And that was it. It was just like a lawn. And now it's kind of integrated pieces of the street that had been removed as part of the sign, as the steps. There's a garden club in the neighborhood really takes care of the garden and the trees there. And so it looks awesome. It's great. But yeah, I kind of wanted to know the backstory. That was what I just said now is way more than what I knew before, when it was just a park built to honor and remember a street surface. And I wanted to know what the backstory was. And I was pretty well surprised and kind of interested and fascinated by it.
Mm-hmm. So what was so significant about this street surface material that someone felt strongly enough to preserve it in any kind of fashion whatsoever?
Right. Yeah. So not only was it the first concrete street in Minnesota, it's also now believed to be the second oldest remaining concrete street in the whole U.S. There's a street in Ohio that's older, or I don't even know how much of it is actually original, but there's some surface in Ohio that's older. But anyway, so it's old, and it also the significance of it is that it came out of a time when vehicles were, automobiles were starting to become a thing on the roads, but horse and buggies were still very much present, and the street surface needed to accommodate both. Needed to be smooth for the vehicles and also provide grip to the horses. And so it's this, it's concrete, and then when it's about to be dried, it's kind of scored into rectangles on the surface that kind of look like faux bricks, but their purpose is that it's provides traction for the horse hooves and the buggies. So it's kind of this unique road surface that is thinking both via automobile and horse and buggy, because at a time there was both. But, again, 1909, 1910, that's also about the time the Ford Model T was taking off. And that was it wasn't the first vehicle, but it was the first mass-produced vehicle available to, the masses, right? It was affordable. And that all but killed the horse and buggy. There was no need for a horse and buggy after that. And so roads that were paved after that, once concrete became, far more widespread and less rare. I mean, it wouldn't use this granitoid process or this patented granitoid method because you didn't need to worry about horse and buggy. You just had to build for the automobile.
Mm-hmm. And so what exactly led to the creation of this park? And I know you had mentioned before there was some kind of fight or controversy about this. First off, what was the fight about and why?
Right.
Why do people feel passionately about this?
Yeah. So this fight started brewing, around 2000, when the city decided that these granitoid streets in the neighborhood were due for repavement. They were in really rough shape. Again, by that point, they were 90 years old and were showing their age. So they were going to repave them, but then they went on kind of paused there because the neighborhood not everyone, but some in the neighborhood led by Carolyn Sundquist, who lives on 6th Street, which had that original granitoid street, really fought to preserve it. Anyway, so she and others found ways to push back on those plans, and eventually, after 4 years of this fight, there was a deeply divided neighborhood at the time, right? People want smooth streets that aren't going to damage their car, that are smooth, and you want good streets. No one wants a pothole street, but the preservation.
What do you mean? No one in Duluth has any issues with potholes.
That's true.
Everyone here, they're going to try to preserve all the potholes.
Right.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. And so what they ended up with after the 4 years is that 6th Street section, that was too far gone. That would be repaved. But 7th Street between 26th Avenue East and Wallace Avenue, that is actually the original granitoid street. It's in rough shape today. I mean, and it's kind of patched with asphalt as you go along. One thing that the preservation groups kind of were advocating for was like, well, this is a natural speed bump, basically. The one big speed bump. It kept speeds and control in the neyborhood.
You'd say that about potholes in general.
Yeah. And I get what they mean, because I went through the neighborhood to look at this and get photos and everything. And you can't, if you can't go faster than 15 miles per hour without feeling like your car is, going to be damaged or something. And if you're below that, you're fine. We know how to handle a rough street here, there, or everywhere in Duluth. So, yeah. And so the fear would be, and from what the neighbors said, it proved to be true, is that once the 6th Street was repaved, people, whipped right by. Anyway, so there's some 2 blocks worth of the original stuff. And then part of this kind of compromise and historic preservation work was that they were able to replicate the street surface on several blocks of East 7th Street, Irving Place, and Clover Street. So those were replaced with a method following that original granitoid patent. And so it's in quite a bit better shape than the original stuff. You drive over it and it kind of vibrates your car a little, not like you're going to damage it, but that's just the nature of those scored marks that I mentioned are designed for the horses. They kind of vibrate your car a little. It's kind of interesting. But the park then is surrounded by, the granitoid streets. It's a kind of an island and in this intersection of several streets, and they used pieces from 6th Street that was repaved. They pulled up old pieces of it and put it over in the garden. So they've got stairs through it that are made out of the old street surface, and then the sign is made of the old street surface as well. They added, interpretive signs detailing the patent, and kind of about the street, and then there's still those old plaques on the concrete there that have been there forever, and that's what the park just used to be. And now there's a garden. And I talked to Anita Stach, who is the former president of the Longview Garden Club. She really kind of spearheaded the effort to turn that into a garden and space. And she said that after 4 years of kind of battling it out with neighbors and people, occasionally kind of getting nasty about whether to repave or to preserve, that project of creating a garden in this once just kind of empty island in the middle of the road was something that really helped keep the peace and unite everyone again. So, yeah, I there was a whole lot to it then that I got out of reporting the story that I didn't know when I just saw it and thought, what is this? What is this? So.
I mean, maybe I'm just missing something here, but what is it about it that makes them care so much to preserve? I'm just trying to picture like a street made nowadays and with, the issues they have with potholes and such, and someone there's an opportunity to replace it and fix it, and they're just like, nope, we want to keep it. I'm just trying to picture that happening today. Is just because of the desire to preserve history, or? Yeah.
So one thing that Carolyn Sundquist told me I thought was interesting was that we can't put historic value only on aesthetics. We can't just decide only the nice looking home, big mansions or homes are worth saving. There are other historic things of value that might be just a street surface to some, but still hold that historic value. And really, what the case they've made is that, one, it was the first concrete street in Minnesota. Two, it was this, kind of at the time revolutionary process. This isn't cobblestone, this isn't gravel, this is pavement, this is concrete, and this is this granitoid process that was designed for this very tiny time in history when there were both horse and buggies and automobiles sharing the road. And within, almost as soon as it was installed, it was obsolete because the Model T replaced the horse and buggy. So there's that significance, but then there's also the kind of the preservation. You don't just preserve things because of their aesthetics, you preserve them because they're historic and important. So I thought that was interesting. I think we kind of get caught up in that wanting to preserve the beautiful, which absolutely, but also, there are some other things that aren't necessarily aesthetically pleasing or or whatever that played a significant role in this case in transportation history.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that's what makes the street surface significant, is just the fact that it was like designed to work with automobiles and horse carriages and buggies and or is there more going on here that makes it kind of significant? You can mention that was patented. Like, in what way is, I guess, what about it is so special?
Yeah, so if you're in that neighborhood, there's some really nice large houses. It's a cool part of Chester Park. I mean, and from what I understand, that the developer kind of some of that brought in the street and first, and the houses kind of followed. They those big, almost mansions, or I guess you could probably argue some are definitely mansions. I don't know, but they kind of followed the road there, and now it's kind of this neighborhood almost built around that road, and also the road was then part of the neighborhood and part of the aesthetics. So I think it just kind of played a unique role, right? I mean, the developers trying to attract that high class clientele that had an automobile, and didn't have to rely on that horse and buggy. So anyway, I think there were just a lot of things happening in that 1909, 1910 range that made the street kind of stand out and unique. And pretty soon, again, yeah, every street's paved, but this one, is unique. And I think, you think of cobblestone streets, downtown Duluth exception, because that isn't that actually old of cobblestone. But I think, if there's an old cobblestone street, people like that. People want that. Is it smooth? Is it practical? No. But if it's historic, people want to hang on to their cobblestone streets. But, and so I kind of think of this in the same vein. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what does the future kind of hold for this remaining street? Is there more to the future of the story?
So there's not really been any chatter of what will come of 7th Street, that 2-block section of the original stuff. It's in rough shape, like I said. Kind of, you got to kind of stick to about 15 miles per hour. I don't know what other people's vehicles can handle, but it's a patchwork of asphalt to fill in potholes and otherwise, and then in the original surface, and that's also not the best way to maintain a street. Mixing of two different materials, asphalt and concrete, not particularly good for the concrete, remaining concrete. So yeah, it's showing its age. It's but there hasn't really been talk of repaving it lately. Carolyn Sundquist, who again led this effort, said she doesn't want to see it go anywhere, but if it has to be done, she hopes that people will push for that replica method that was done closer to the park, where they were able to use that original patent and create a replica of it that kind of serves the preservation focus a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, why do you think that this fits into Northlandia? It sounds like you kind of discover it literally going off the beaten path a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that people don't, maybe if you stop and go in the park and read the signs, you'll have a better understanding. I mean, you definitely will. But if you just see the sign, I don't know if you're going to know what Granitoid Memorial Park is. I guess I maybe think that Granitoid was someone who died. It was a last name, maybe. I don't know. But I think, yeah, it's kind of just one of those oddities, maybe, until you start looking into it a little bit further and you find that there's some, folks behind it that have done a lot of hard work in preserving history, but also reuniting the neighborhood, as Anita Stech said, and, being able to kind of have this gathering place on National Night Out and otherwise, that the whole neighborhood can get together and, put the wounds of the repaving drama of yesteryear behind them.
And what divided now unites.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Jimmy, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks again so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Wyatt. Happy 20th episode.
Indeed. And thank you for joining us on this venture into Northlandia. To read the article for this week's column, as well as see photos, visit duluthnewstribune.com/topics/Northlandia. You can find all the episodes of Northlandia on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you or someone you know has a unique story that you believe could have a place here in Northlandia, let us know by emailing northlandia@duluthnnews.com. Join us again next week and discover the extraordinary stories that you just might miss if you're not in the right place at the right time, ready to step off the beaten path with no rush to return, here in Northlandia.